You should be seeing the mural board with icebreaker and all of that. Fantastic. Um, so what we're going to do is going to do our standard icebreaker. Um, uh, then we're going to go through and talk about just that standard bit of housekeeping, and then we're focusing on rail stations, where we are now with rail stations, what a rail station looks like in its structures, what rail replacement buses are and why, and often why rail replacement, the what platforms are and where they need to be. There's some work on rail station entrances, and then kind of talk about the overall vision that we're going to aim for. Now, bearing in mind that all the stuff that I'm talking about, some of it we're needing to put in Q1 next year, but we're going to be very slow on any changes that roll out. There's some parts that we're just going to have to force in, and then there's other parts that we're going to be, which impact a lot more on local authorities, and we're going to be quite slow in how we do that transition, like most of the transitions that we do. So let me just get up a list of people. Running through the icebreaker, we're just going to do name, pronoun, where you're from, and the favourite train station to get a rail replacement bus from. So I'm Dr. J. I use they as a pronoun. Where am I from? I'm working for Department for Transport as effectively as a service owner for NAPTAN. And my favourite train station to get a rail replacement bus from is none, because I've yet to actually catch a rail replacement bus. I've been in London for nearly 20 years. I've been in the UK for nearly 20 years, and I have yet to catch a rail replacement bus, because if I see it on the schedule, I find another way. So, Elise, you're the next one up.
Hi, yeah, I'm Elise. I'm the Senior Public Transport Officer for North Northamptonshire Council. I go by she or her. And rail replacement buses, I have yet to catch one. So I know. No, yeah, I've yet to catch a rail replacement bus, but I have been taxied because a train broke down. So it's not quite the same thing, but yeah.
So
I'm
and it was a
really
taxi.
lucky.
It was a taxi provided by the train company.
It was, yes,
So
because we
that
had to abandon the entire journey because the wires were pulled down by the train in front of us. So we
wow.
had to, yeah. So we had to reverse back, and then they got us all taxis and took us down to the next railway station to get the next train. So,
and weirdly enough, those taxis are rail replacement buses, technically.
Technically, yes.
Technically, and technicalities count.
Absolutely. So it's wherever. So in that sense, yes, I have used them, and the best place is where I'm stood at the time that I need it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Ian McGregor, you're the next one up.
Hi, I'm Ian McGregor from Connect Tees Valley, he, him. I have got several rail replacement buses over the years, but I can't say any of them have been a pleasant experience, so I don't really have a favourite station. I've been on one where the driver hadn't got a clue where he was going, and neither did the passenger trying to direct him. So it took about an hour for a 20-minute journey. And I've been on others with double-decker buses trying to take suitcases upstairs because the downstairs was completely rammed full. So yeah, it's something I try to avoid if possible.
Yeah, no, they sound, the more I hear of them, the more nightmarish they sound. Iona, you're the next one up.
Hi everyone, yeah, Iona, use she, her, and I work for Strathclyde Partnership for Transport, so that covers 12 council areas in Greater Glasgow area. Believe it or not, I've never been on a rail replacement bus, not because ScotRail are so efficient and fantastic, but I tend not to, where I live, I'm not particularly near a train station, so yeah, can't think I've ever been on one, to be honest.
And Leon, you're the next one up.
Hi there. Is my thing working yet? Leon Byford, pronouns any will do. I'm a product manager from Transport for London. To be honest, the last time I took a rail replacement service was probably a decade or two ago. And I find that usually it's there's usually a regular bus that will get me where I need to go much better. So it's not something I tend to get much.
Brilliant, thank you. And Pete, you're the last one up.
Hi there, I'm Pete, and I'm here as an individual, just generally been interested in NAPTAN. Pronouns he, him. Favourite place to get a rail replacement from is probably Crewe, on the basis that there is a dedicated waiting room there for rail replacement buses with heating and lights and everything that you could possibly need, and that's probably the best. I will confess though that I do some rail replacements in my spare time coordinating, so I have a little bit of knowledge on this. Just rather put that up front for everybody.
That sounds brilliant, because you've probably got slightly more context than some of us today. So what I'm going to do is I'll just quickly go through the standard housekeeping and do the previously on up on the NAPTAN site, and then we'll focus on rail stations for the bulk of the time. Because we're needing to do some work, and I wanted to make sure that everyone understands it, we can ask some questions, we can pick around and see what things I haven't thought of, and then there's the standard little feedback corner. So previous meetings, we've got a YouTube channel, like, subscribe, blah 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 blah. I can't in all seriousness pretend to be a YouTuber, even though I've got hundreds of hours of stuff up there now. You can also follow us on Eventbrite, which is the best way of keeping up to date with when meetings need to move and things like that. And we've got a newsletter. We don't just use the newsletter for letting you know about things. We also, on a monthly basis, we also use it for any notifications if there's outages or any problems with NAPTAN. So if you're signed up to that, you're going to get everything. I know it's December and we're having a public meeting in December, but there is no December public meeting. I had to move November by a week because I couldn't get back from the island of Gotland, or the Goth Island, in the middle of the Baltic Sea in time to do the public meetings. So we've got, in January, we're going to have some at the end of January talking about accessibility, and then February and March are yet to be decided, and I've got pretty much the dates for the rest of the year, and I'll put those up so that you can put them in your calendars. And if there's anything you'd like us to cover, just put a sticky there or let me know or get in touch, because we want these to be also useful to everybody. Well, we want these to be useful to everybody involved, and if there's stuff that we're not talking about that you'd like us to cover, we can put that up there. How is NAPTAN doing? One of the things that very few of you were on the old NAPTAN. Ye olde NAPTAN, which was taken out in 2021, was flakier than a flaky thing at times. So one of the things that we've been doing over the last year or so is kind of putting together the performance metrics for everybody. I'll just let Liam in. Hey Liam, you haven't missed much. What I might do is I'll just finish this bit and then we'll get you to do the quick icebreaker so that we know who you are, and anyone listening to this or watching this knows who you are when they hear your voice. So we're doing the performance metrics just to reassure everybody that the new system is stable, it's performative, it's doing everything as quickly as possible. So for November, we had 100% uptime. We had 227 files from local authorities processed. Most of those were well and truly under 3 minutes. I think we can do 10 files in around about 3 minutes when you do the bulk uploads. Most people's uploads, unless you're London, take around 90 seconds. If you're London, you're closer to the 3 minutes just because you're that much bigger. And Liam's gone. Hopefully he will return. And if you want to see all the decisions made and all of the updates, we've got the site. We've got this page on the NAPTAN site where we're collecting all of the guidance, all of the information. I'm taking down some of the pages that are on other government websites and bringing them to here. I'm just currently working out all the different wording and the pieces that we need to put in. Cool, so that's all the housekeeping out the way. So today we are talking about trains or rail stations. So first off, just to define what we're looking at trains. So we've got our normal rail, international rail, of which there is really only Eurostar at the moment. I know there will eventually be a competitor to Eurostar coming in next year, I believe, but at the moment it's Eurostar. We've got some heritage rail which runs on the Great British Rail network. So it loops across and comes and it runs on the same tracks as your standard trains. And then there's private heritage rail which is not on the standard Great British Rail network. So is there any type of train that I have missed in describing this? No, that's great. So then what I've tried to describe is what a rail station is. And I've got a little added definition that I can add on here. So a rail station is one or more platforms where a train can stop and passengers can disembark and board, and this is separate from the street infrastructure. So most rail stations are not involved in the street. You don't have cars and trains sharing the same space, and when they do have to share the same space, you've got your ding-dong barriers. That's not the technical term, but I don't know what the technical term is. So if you just give me a second, I will just add the passengers alight, join and embark. Can alight or can board or disembark. It's trying to remember the English matching for boarding and unboarding, and it's disembarking, isn't it? That is what we're thinking of for a rail station. What was that?
Boarding and alighting.
Ah, alighting. Thank you. Yes, because it's alight here for the National Gallery and the National Portrait Gallery, which is something I hear a lot as I go through Charing Cross Station. So yeah, a rail station is one or more platforms where a train can stop, where passengers can board or alight. This is separate from the street infrastructure. That I think is the best definition, generic, very much in our terms of a bus stop is where a bus stops. A rail station is where a train stops and passengers can get on and off, because there are some places where trains stop which aren't about passengers. There are some staff train stops where only staff can get on and off, and there are some freight stops. So we just wanted to be clear that when we talk about a rail station, we're talking about a passenger rail station, because this becomes a thing as we go on. So I'm going to ask you, what structures do we have at rail stations that we need to have? What are the various things that a rail station has? I'm assuming you've all got one close by and you can think about it.
Platforms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hopefully a ticket office or some form of ticketing capability. Sometimes do you want the infrastructure on the platforms as well?
You can tell me. Have a crack. I'm all ears.
So on platforms there are, we've got barriers, ticket barriers, we've got station buildings, we've got waiting shelters, whether that's part of the station building itself or whether they're the equivalent of a bus shelter on a platform. You have help points, you have lighting, you have lifts, you have stairs. What else we've got? On most stations should have tactiles and definitely yellow markings to indicate where you should or shouldn't stand.
Tactile markings.
They all have real-time information displays on every single platform.
And RTIs. Wow. I'm just going to go back and fix up some of my dreadful typing this morning. Does every station have a ticket barrier?
No.
A lot of them don't.
I was thinking of one in London that doesn't, or that didn't when I used to use it a lot. Not always. I know that there's
I
some
think it's fair to
really.
say if you go to more, sorry, there's a more rural areas, you probably find that a lot of them don't have a majority of these things. There's a
I
good
was
chunk
about-
in rural rails that don't have real-time information, just about have a platform, some of them, and I mean that genuinely.
I was going to show you all Burney Arms, which has become one of my favourite little train stations because it's on the Norfolk Broads, and this is Burney Arms train station. Which is a single. I think, is that a help point? Or now that could either be a help point or a halt for the train, and I can't quite tell. Can I? Am I lucky enough on Google to be able to see it? Oh God, no. Where have I ended up? Okay. I love the fact that, so yes, that green box will either be a help point or tell the driver that I want to catch a train here box. So this is one of the smallest, least used train stations. And then there's another one just a little bit further down the road in Reedham, which we might be able to get a look at. We don't, unlike a lot of the bigger rail stations, you sometimes don't actually get much of a look to see what there is. We're just going to do a bit of a wander. I feel horrible picking on the Norfolk Broads, but as a Londoner, it's important for me to see what a non-London station might look like. If I can manage to get to it, sorry, there is a spot here where you can turn and see the station, sort of. So we've got a shelter, a platform. The platforms have markings on them. There's some more shelters. There's some kind of crossing bridge. I don't think it's got a lift. And that's pretty much it for the station. Oh, there's some kind of call box or ticketing box. And that's the station. That's one of the stations back from Burney Arms.
That was a ticketing machine you saw there.
Oh, it was a ticketing machine, and that
Yeah.
and that I thought it was a TARDIS. I thought it was a TARDIS, but no.
Sorry, I disappeared for a moment then.
No, it's fine. So this kind of weird thing inside the box is a ticketing machine on one platform.
It is, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Do you know this? Is this a station you know in it's called Reedham? I think it's
No.
called Reedham.
No.
Oh, sweet. So yeah, we've got all of those bits and pieces, some of which, all of which we do kind of want to let somebody know whether or not they've got them. So one of the things that we know, and I'll talk about later, is that the A+ the accessibility audit that was done for all rail stations can give us a lot of this information, and we just need to be able to put that in so that you know which platform has the ticketing machines on and things like that. So if I scroll across, the next bit, now, first off, the why. It's not why rail replacement buses. I know why they exist, because they often replace rail services. Why are we focusing on them? And this is because there's PSVAIR regulations that have come into force, which require anyone who's got a public service vehicle to have audio and audiovisual next stop and destination announcements. And rail replacement buses fall into this when the distance that they're travelling was less than 15 miles. Now, we could either only focus on that 15-mile loop and all of that, or we just provide the data so that rail replacement buses, wherever they are, can have the data that they need to do audio visual announcements on the systems. So one of the things that's come up, and Pete, you might be able to help verify this, is a lot of the buses and coaches used have the audio visual announcements, but because rail replacement doesn't have the data sometimes, they can't program in the journey. And the other thing is sometimes they don't have those audio visual announcement pieces. And one of the other things that the government is looking at is how those get put onto some of the older buses that are sometimes used on rail replacement buses as rail replacement buses. And then again, they need the data to make that run. So the whole thing that I'm focusing on is the data that people need to make these things run, because often rail stations are not listed in a way that allows people to grab them and create those journeys with the rail replacement bus stops. Does that make sense to everybody? This is so we're putting in the data to enable everyone to meet the legislation. So one of the fun then is where stops. Now, Leon, I'm going to do and London, because London has a whole different realm of ways of doing it, because you have so many bus stops around rail stations. You just put the little yellow jacket on and you tend to use a bus stop for this. A lot of other places don't tend to use bus stops because rail replacement buses can take longer to load than your standard bus. So a rail replacement bus can sometimes take up to 20 minutes or more to load and get ready to go, whereas your standard bus takes about 2 to 3 minutes maximum. And so one of the things that we're needing to look at is, where do rail replacement buses stop? Elise, do you have in your lovely Northamptonshire, you don't have that many rail stations?
3.
You have 3?
Yeah.
Do you know how the rail replacements work for those?
Well, I know that anyway because I come from a rail background, which is why I knew so much about what's on railway stations. So when a piece of line, normally when a piece of line is blocked, the train operator will have contracts in place with local bus operators in order to provide a bus to do the journey that the train would have ordinarily done. So it normally goes, so for example, on my patch, if we were going from Corby down to London St Pancras and the entire route needed to be bused instead of done by rail, then the bus would go from Corby to Kettering railway station, from Kettering railway station to Wellingborough railway station, from Wellingborough railway station to Bedford railway station, and it would do that all the way down the line. So then it would be Luton Airport Parkway, and then, but it would only go between the railway stations. It wouldn't stop in between or go anywhere else. And the buses stop outside the actual railway station in order to drop people off and pick them up.
Excellent. That's really great. So I've just gone to Kettering, which has apparently only one platform. Is that correct?
No, that's the station building.
So this is fun because Kettering, I'm just going to, they've got this railway station. So one of the things that this Network Rail site should have is a complete view of everything that's within the station. But unfortunately,
They
this one,
normally do. They
yeah,
normally
this
do.
one's only got the one platform, which is very weird. Which is why I was
Yeah,
like, oh, I
that's
didn't realise.
no. It's got 4 platforms.
Oh, I'm sorry, Corby. I've gone to Corby,
Yeah,
not Kettering.
Corby. Yeah, Corby only has 1.
Oh, that makes sense because I was worried there for a moment. So here's Corby.
Yeah,
There's everything, and it should have. It doesn't. So it just says rail replacement buses outside the station. So
correct.
obviously it's using that bus stop. It's probably
Correct.
using that bus stop there.
It is, yes.
Right. Cool. So then if I go to Kettering, stations openly. You did a very good description of a rail replacement route, by the way. Thank you for that. Kettering, Ket.
And it
Right.
normally takes the fastest roads as well, so it won't go through all the houses. It will take on the fastest main roads to get between the 2 stations.
Yeah. So here's Kettering with its 4, and
Correct.
it's got its taxi rank.
Yeah.
It's got the drop-off point. Right. It's got all of those things, and then if I come to onwards travel information, it should tell me the rail replacement. I'm assuming it's going depart from the bus stop on Northfield Ave, stop A on the bus map.
Correct.
Cool. So what we are needing to do, because there are some stations, if I grab Reedham, for example. So Reedham, which is in Norfolk, Reedham tells me when I click on rail replacement services, at the station entrance, please note that due to access restrictions, the station is only served by a minibus. Now, that's great. However, the station has 2 entrances and they fail to state which one. And
Wonderful.
there's two roads, but part of that problem, and this is another part that I will be taking up. Yes, this is the same station. So if I close this and go back, you'll see that you've got Reedham Station listed here. There is a walkway round to the station here and a driveway into the station here with parking, and obviously the footbridge over. But there should be 2 rail station entrances. There needs to be one here and one about here for walking in. That rail station entrance isn't listed in NAPTAN, and this is part of another bit that I'll be diving on, and that also means that their rail replacement stop needs to be listed on NAPTAN as somewhere, so that anyone doing the minibus to pick people up from Reedham and take them to the next train station, which is, I'm just going to make the world easier for me to look at, which I think is Haddiscoe or Kentley. That little minibus will need to know that it's leaving Reedham and will need to say where it's going to, because you don't want to hop on the minibus that's going to Haddiscoe and going this way when you actually wanted to catch the one up to Buckingham and wherever. There's going to be a big city around here, isn't there? Where is the big city? Oh, Norwich. So you're either going to be wanting to go to Norwich or you're going to be wanting to go to whatever, Lowestoft or Great Yarmouth. Yes. Oh, I've been to Great Yarmouth. I know where that is. And Lowestoft is also on that whole seafront. Excellent. Now I know what I'm talking about. So this is all, even if you're just catching the bus from Reedham, you need to know which way you're going, because there'll be multiple ways to go. So again, those audio-visual announcements need to be there. Sorry, over-explaining this. So,
so when we have a rail replacement bus service on, the real-time information displays become ineffective, which is why we have platform staff sent out to all the railway stations so that they can physically put people on the right buses.
Yep. People on the right buses. Yep. And one of the things that the that the new legislation is looking at is that reassurance when you've been put on the right bus and you've been told it's the third stop. It's that reassurance that we are now stopping here, because what happens sometimes, and this is anecdotally, but everything in my world is anecdotally, sometimes the driver will stop at a station and there will be 6 people who want to go to a station that's in between the next one that he's scheduled to go to, and he will sometimes go, oh, that's fine, hop on, I'll drop you, I'll change my route slightly and I'll drop you off at this station and then drive on to the main one that I'm going to, rather than having people wait for another rail replacement bus and things like that. That's what I've been told. Pete and Elise, I'm hoping you're going to tell me that is the sort of thing that sometimes happens, that there's a little bit of passenger experience focus and ad hocness that goes on within this world.
That depends. It depends upon the route. It depends upon the times that they've been told that they have to be at particular locations. And it also depends if it's not part of the route, they would have had to do a change to go onto a different route entirely in order to do that, then no, that wouldn't be allowed, because that would be served by a different train operator.
Yeah. So there's some. I'm just going to so there's some limited ad hoc.
Yes. Generally, the bus drivers do try to accommodate, but if it's something that is just, they could potentially lose the contract if they don't stick to what they've actually been contracted to do. So
yeah,
there is a certain element, but
yeah. Pete, thank you for putting your hand up. I really appreciate it.
It's okay. Something that could be of note with the ad hoc is sometimes standby or spare buses get used. Say there's overcrowding on the bus that they're meant to be on, then a spare bus will just run to whichever stations passengers need dropping off at, and so it won't find out where those passengers are going to until the driver gets to them. Then obviously answer the question. So that's a very ad hoc sort of version that we sometimes do.
Right. That one is going to be almost impossible to do the announcements, but that's getting people the data and then figuring out the fine details is kind of that fine point.
But that kind of fits in with the having the people there to get people on the right bus.
Yeah.
Because if it's something like Peterborough to King's Cross, for example, the train operator will know where the key locations are where the majority of people will want to go. So they will know that on a 12-car service that has been terminated, that they're going to need probably 5, 6, 7, depending upon time of day, 5, 6, 7 buses that are going to need to go to Stevenage. They know that there's going to be a significant number that are wanting to get to Finsbury Park. But if it's that entire route, they can then dedicate X amount of buses that say, right, we're not stopping at those intermediate stations. We are just going to go from Peterborough to Stevenage, or we're just going to go from Peterborough direct to Finsbury Park.
Yep, that makes.
And they can then take those people out, get them on their way as quickly as possible, and then they've got the other buses to then do the fill-ins in between, and try and help move people as quickly as possible, because buses can only have a finite number of people on them, unlike trains where it's basically as many bodies as you can squeeze in. There isn't an actual loading factor issue in that sense like there is on a bus. So therefore being able to segregate people out and say, right, X amount of people on this bus, we know it's a safe load, and you're all going to the same place, so there's no problem.
Yeah, that makes tons of sense, and that is, I think, part of that is why there's this there's part of this requirement for the audiovisual announcements to ensure that anyone who has access needs or suffers from anxiety and things like that has that, well, that's also an access need, has that reassurance. This is the bus for Stevenage. We are calling it Stevenage. We are not calling it any intermediate points, or whether or not this is the bus to Stevenage, but we're going to call it all the intermediate points. So if you're hopping off at an intermediate point, you can see where it's coming and you've got that reassurance. Because,
exactly.
yeah, so the PSV AIR makes tons of sense even in these things. Pete, I saw your hand go up and go down. I just wanted to check that if you had any comments. And Iona, I might turn to you as well, just to try to get a sense of the cross-bordering, because PSV AIR, I believe, is only for England, but the cross-bordering issues that we may wish to consider as well. So Pete first and then Iona.
The only thing that I'd say is a lot of the time, coordinators are dealing with things on the ground, and timetables and stopping patterns get changed a lot on the ground in the moment, rather than the basic timetable goes out the window the majority of the time.
Exactly, yeah. It has to
Everything
be
is done by
reactive.
local people there and then on the ground. So any company that's setting these things up, they're going to have a lot of spare routes sat there just in case they're used.
It has
And a
to
lot of
be
stopping patterns.
reactive. It has to be reactive in at the time that it's, because also you don't the development of why the railway has been closed, if it's not a planned, if it's a planned issue versus an emergency issue, that's a very different thing.
So just for clarity, at the moment I'm focusing on planned, because
Okay.
the emergency
Planned.
ones are a whole different kettle of fish,
Yeah.
even down to the types of buses that they might get. So I'm just like, oh, let's keep it just to the planned
Okay,
ones, because if I
the
get
planned
those
one,
sorted,
everything will be done so far in advance, and the bus operators technically should know in significant amount of time, a lot more than they do with normal run day-to-day operations on buses, and the routes should all be mapped out with timings. If it's planned closures, all the times of the buses will be laid out already. That will all be part of the project plan. So that should be able to be briefed out to passengers, and it should be briefed out to passengers in enough time, certainly within 12 weeks.
yeah.
Within the 12-week window as a minimum.
Excellent. And one of the things that I also understood from that, just before I turn to you, Iona, is that this is where I got the sense of the large loading times, because I asked bus operators about the long journeys, and because they're not done, they're done off the tachyometer and driving hours rather than off the route, off the schedules, which is that slight difference between buses. And one of the things that they said is that there's enough built in so that the drivers can have a break when they arrive, because they leave about 45 minutes spare for turning the bus around, the driver having a break, and reloading, which they need to build into all the driving times. So if there's things that also impact the roads, like large storms, etc., during one of these, apparently handcart very fast downhill is kind of where all the schedules go. And a lot of the bus drivers are aware of their driving hours and aware of the exceptions and things like that. So that also impacts some of the ad hocness of where people can go to.
Yeah.
Excellent. And you said it's about 12 weeks in advance.
As a minimum. So they are notifying the general public, although the bus operators should be made aware a lot earlier than that, because these things are planned 12, 18 months, 2 years in advance of actually being on the ground.
Yeah.
The finite details of exactly where they're working from and to what days, they're all built in 2 years, at least 2 years in advance.
And so rail fixie work planned 12 to 24 months ahead.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's all great. Iona, cross-bordering. This is going to be fun. I know that occasionally there's stuff from York up to Scotland. That line gets closed and you've got to do rail replacement buses up to either Glasgow or Edinburgh.
And Aberdeen and Inverness.
Are you PSVAIR in Scotland, or is it only England?
It's a good question. I don't know. We don't. Although we are the Transport Authority, we're completely separate from the rail network. So, we don't have really that much to do with this side of things.
That's cool.
It should be the same.
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably
from a rail perspective, it's exactly the same.
Because the railways in Scotland are considered part of the GBR rail, aren't they?
No, they're not.
Of course.
So Scottish Rail is its own entity within Transport Scotland.
Let me just go and do this. If I go Glasgow, is there only one station in Glasgow?
No, there's several.
Let's just go for Glasgow Central. I at least know that Glasgow is
Central is the biggie. That's where the England bound trains would leave from.
Right, let's have a look at the
actually the Queen Street they also do stuff.
So it's got levels and layers.
Yeah, it has.
And 15.
But the lower level ones are for local, generally speaking.
Right. But all the trains are on the lower level, aren't they?
No.
There's
2 levels.
Yeah.
How is this not showing me 2 levels?
So see, 1 to 11 are all on the 1 level, like ground level. And these ones are 13 and 12, I think, are as well. Yeah.
14 and 15 are as well, and then there's a whole load of them underneath.
Well, they're not showing up, the lower ones underneath, which is great, because this is supposed to be a map of everything in the station, but I will find that out when I do more stuff. And it doesn't have, it's just got on Gordon Street, but it doesn't tell you where Gordon Street is. Hope Street, Gordon Street. Okay.
Yeah.
So you just hop off. You
literally
it's expecting
walk
you
out
to
the
go
front.
out there.
Yeah. And all the buses will be there.
Let's just have a look. Glasgow Central. Go Central Rail. Cool. Central Railway Station. Lots of trains. Yeah, I'm going to have fun putting in all the platforms there. And here is Gordon Street, which has a bus stop that's in the middle of or is it?
That's just under the canopy outside.
Right.
So that is, I know it looks like it's off the road, but it's not.
It's not. I did have a moment, the owner, of going, I feel you're pretty good at putting your stuff on the road. Why is this? But obviously there's some kind of looping.
Yeah, that could be
around.
Probably. Yeah, I don't know why that is in that location. We can look at moving that.
Let's just have a look. Because that
there, you can see the pole there. If you.
Yeah. So here's the bus stop. But somehow it's looking like it's about somewhere in the middle of this building rather than like right on Gordon Street, because your streets ain't wide. No offence to Glasgow.
Yeah, it's maybe being placed there because it is sort of it's off the actual stretch of road, but obviously it's not inside.
Yeah.
Which it does look like.
Yeah. It might it's one of those ones of just a tiny tweak, but I'm not gonna complain. So So let's run back to the things that we're talking about. So one of the things that we're needing to do is we're needing to put in all of the stops for where the rail replacement buses will stop, and just make sure that we've got them. If they're standard bus stops, we don't need to do anything. We just need to say it's this rail, it leaves from this stop. And if it's not a standard stop, we need to put in a stop that indicates that it's only for rail replacement buses, because you don't want your standard buses turning up to be in the middle of a car park. Like, for example, in Reedham, you don't want your standard buses that go around there suddenly thinking that they can stop at the station in the car park and trying to put a full bus in an area where they shouldn't be. Platforms. We need to put in, we have 2,500 rail stations and 3 platforms, 3 railway platforms. There is obviously a ginormous data issue that has been around since the early 2000s that it's now my problem to resolve. One of the reasons that we need to put in platforms is we need to put it in because all the accessibility information is at platform level, because it's really important to know which platform has the lifts on, so that if you're coming into a station with a platform, if you're coming into a station at a platform that has no lift, you're aware of that and you can adapt your journey however you need to. And also, one of the things that it leads to in the future, if you are coming into a station, and this is the golden future that we're all aiming for, because this impacts a lot of people travelling who have access needs. You're travelling in on a train and it's coming into a platform, but the lift is just broken. Lifts do lift things and occasionally stop working. So you then get an alert on your phone saying, hey, you're coming into this platform, the lift is broken. Don't hop off because you're going to be stuck at the station. Stay on the train and go to the next station, and the lift is working. And you can either do the loop and come back to the station, or it can tell you, hey, catch the lift up, go out and catch this bus, because this bus is going to come back to where you need to be. Or something like that. So it enables dynamic replanning of journeys based on lift outages and things like that. That is the beautiful thing that we're aiming for.
That's really practical on trains because of the length of time between certain stops. So, for example, if you were going, so for example, I was on a train from York down to London King's Cross yesterday. Well, no, so from Glasgow to London King's Cross yesterday. If I needed to get off at York, but the lift on that platform was broken, in your scenario, my next stop would have been London King's Cross.
So what it needs to tell you is it needs to give you the options, because the last
and
thing
then you would have had to pay extra because you've taken the seat down to London King's Cross, and then you could get back from London King's Cross. So that's 4 hours plus interchange time. It's not practical.
So as somebody who needs lifts at a station, I've been caught out coming into Welwyn Garden City more than once, where I was coming in on a platform where the lift was broken, and the options were for me to struggle up the stairs with a colleague, because in the middle of winter my legs don't work, or to go on the train and come back. Now, it's knowing that real-time information and being given the information to make an informed decision, because I could try to hop off at York. If I need a lift to get off that platform, my options are to go to London and come back, to hop off, or at least just give me a second, or hop off at that platform and change to a local train that's calling at the same platform and do a shorter loop, or if I can do the stairs, figure out how I'm going to do the stairs. It's giving people the information and the options so that they can choose what to do, so we don't end up with people trapped on platforms or trapped on trains, which has happened at multiple points. And these are the things that we're eventually trying to resolve. Does that make sense? So it doesn't mean that my option of taking the loop is always the right option. It might be a slightly different option. It might be hop off and catch this local train because it's going to go to this station where you can just, where the lifts are working and you can get out of the station, or you can come back. And you'll come back on a different platform. It's giving the information, and that's why we need to have it at platform level, because it's not that all of York suddenly became inaccessible. It's this one platform at York became inaccessible to those people, and we need to be able to give them options.
It's also making sure that they have access to assistance at stations, because if in that scenario you should be booking assistance at the station, and they will then be able to get you using the service lifts rather than using the public lifts in those sort of scenarios.
Interestingly enough, I did actually meet assistants at that station, and there were no service lifts that I was offered. I was just told to get my crippled self up the stairs, and fortunately I had a colleague who could walk beside me and just kind of give me some help, because they were slippery and icy, and nightmare. But these are the things that people are faced with, because also
absolutely.
I recognise the booking assistance is a whole other thing that I don't want to tackle, because that's a separate part to this. But that's why we're going for trying to put in platforms, because we want to put in platforms so we can do the accessibility, because it's at platform level, so that people have that information to have agency and autonomy over their journey.
Yeah.
Cool. So now, rail station entrances. The bane of my life, Leon. London be London, you're generally pretty good, although I will show that there is still a problem. I'm going to go to, I'm assuming it's still not working. So if I go to Tooting in London, there's a rail station in Tooting. Not Tooting Broadway, here's Tooting Rail Station. Tooting Rail Station, it's a lovely little two platform rail station, but when I try and do a quick directions, let me just, I won't put in my postcode, let's put in Tooting Beck. So if I want to get from Tooting Beck, it's a very short journey. You can walk it, but I need to, I can bus it. Does it give me the entrance? Oh, it's kind of giving me the entrance. It's kind of giving, is that giving me the entrance to?
I think what it often does is it tries to get you to a road that is, closest to the centroid, so the actual point where it thinks the station is, and then
so if I go Tooting Station, let's just see if it comes up with the right one. Tooting Station, London Road. Does that? Oh, that does it a bit better. Is it? Oh, it is. It's taking me to. It's taking me to here, which is good. We need to put in platforms, obviously, and make a whole pile of more things. And it should be doing the entrance. But the rail station entrances are sometimes not. There's a lot of rail station entrances that don't exist. So there's a number of rail stations that we know of, and I'll just turn back to Reedham, where it's got multiple. I've walked away from it. It's got multiple entrances, but it doesn't map them quite correctly. So one of the things that we're looking at, because I've got 148 of you, 148 LAs, 2,500 rail stations. Does anyone know why the rail station entrances are run by local authorities where the rail is run by the central authority?
So the road,
Leon's laughing now because Leon's realizing where my questioning is going. Elise.
The road isn't part of the rail infrastructure. The road is owned and operated by either Highways England or the local authority. The boundary between the railway and the road is the the entrance, the boundary entrance, the thresholds of the railway station.
Okay, that's a wonderful technical example. Let me just go to King's Lynn and grab the station map. So one of the things that I need to know from King's Lynn is, it's only got one entrance. Is this the entrance? That's probably the entrance because it's got an in and out, some stairs and a ramp. It's got two entrances. It's got three entrances. It's got four entrances. These entrances are within the station. This is an entrance that is that barrier between the station and the road. Now, one of the things that we need to ensure that we've got is these entrances and exits are shown so that people know where they can come in and out. Now, I have a whole pile of missing entrances. My options are I try to corral 148 local authorities to do something, or we bring rail station entrances into the central control. We have some, now this is a long-term problem to solve. We will have some duplicates for a while. There will be some rail station entrances that have local authorities. We will eventually get rid of those, and we will have all the rail station entrances mapped from knowing about them from the National Rail. Does that make sense?
No.
And why not? Why not, Elise? And is it because of the boundary?
Yes, because it's not within local authorities' jurisdiction. That is purely a Network Rail.
Okay, so
you need to, for things
here,
like that, for all of those entrances to the buildings, you have to speak to Network Rail.
Absolutely, and thanks, Leon. So, for example, if I have them under the central control and take my advice from Network Rail,
correct,
then I can the entrance that you would have, that whoever looks after King's Lynn would have created, which will only be for this one. I'm fairly sure King's Lynn only has the one. We could remove that because it would be a duplicate, and we could remove the local authority one and just have the centralized ones. And I'm asking this simply because
correct,
we have so many missing, you would not believe. And some of that is, and it's wildly variant across local authorities. So at least you only have three.
Yeah.
But I also know from having a look at your data yesterday, you have no rail station entrances.
Because they're not within our control.
No,
they're Network Rail control.
You should have rail station entrances. What just happened to my? Did my Chrome just crash? Oh, for heaven's sakes, my Chrome just crashed. Just be with me. No, at least currently, rail station entrances are owned by local authorities, and they are part of what local authorities put in. Let me just restore and see if that works. Fantastic. Bear with me here 2 seconds while I quickly get back to where I was and share that screen. I'm obviously slaughtering my Chrome with this many. So one of the reasons that I figured out, although Elise, you've brought up another one, one of the reasons that I figured out why the entrances are under local authority control was partially because the centralized function, aka what I'm doing currently, can sometimes be so slow at sorting stuff out that you're putting in the rail station entrances to resolve the problem that the rail station isn't live. But there's a lot of places of the 148 where they haven't been put in, and at least I'm not picking on you. I believe that they just haven't been. They were three things that we didn't migrate across for whatever reason from 300 to 305. So you do have 3 rail station entrances. They're just still sitting in West Northamptonshire, and we'll need to bring them. We'll just need to get you to create them manually and bring them across.
Okay.
It's totally fine. It's not a big problem, and we'll then remove them.
I can sort that out. That's not an issue.
Yeah. It's not a biggie, but it's part of the where was I? I went to Wrexham. I went to somewhere, and they had three. I knew that they had 3 rail stations, but they only had 2 rail station entrances because one of the stations has been put in slightly newer. When I say slightly new, it was put in 2010, I believe. And at that time, the local authority didn't realise that they needed to put in a rail station entrance. So the station has no rail station entrance. So I don't know how people are mapping to enter that station. So this is one of the reasons why I'm looking at bringing entrances away from local authorities and centrally, just so that the same experiences across the entirety of the country. So Iona, you probably have the same, and Ian, you also possibly have the same, of just having not quite enough rail station entrances, or you've put them in and you've looked after them, and Iona, I'm sure you've looked after them really well, but they've always been reactive rather than matching exactly what is happening on the buildings. Would that be right? I'm not going to go and shame you by grabbing your NAP10 data and checking, because that's a bit cruel. Iona's now. Sorry, Ian, off you go.
For the Tees Valley, I know Di. I'm just taking over NAP10 from Di, but so I don't really know where we're at with the station.
Di's stuff is mint. She is one of the people who've her and a couple of others are the OG NAP10ers, and their stuff matches the schema a lot and is really generally pretty good. There's some nuances that we disagree on, but those nuances are fine nuances. So yeah, Ian, you're lucky. I think all of your stations have entrances. Whether or not they match exactly where the entrances should be now, if buildings have been rebuilt and adjusted and moved and things like that, that's a fine cleanup point, but you're one of the exceptions. Iona's going to turn around and say Glasgow's pretty good as well, because you've been working on it for a very long time too.
So our team don't do it. Don't maintain those entrances in the data, and certainly I know you'll remember, Dr. J, about us moving to the new system, and definitely
you've quietly taken them all out. Oh,
no,
okay.
No, we haven't removed anything, but we just wouldn't be able to change anything.
Yeah. So again, that's part of it. Of what we'll do is, by taking them in centrally, we will set up so that they match these Network Rail. I won't use Burney Arms. Corby Station, for example. If I look at the station map, we will use it to match the Network Rail, so that you've got the entrances, because this has 1, 2, 3 entrances. So those 3 entrances are noted, especially if these entrances have timings to them. We can add those things, like this one. Generally, the side entrances are closed or open longer than the main buildings, and little things like that. So there's the ultra advantage of being able to put times against things, where I tend not to put time into NAP10, because NAP10 doesn't need time or anything else added to it. But yeah, so for example, Corby should have 3 entrances. At least I bet you only have 1, which will be that boundary one, which will come, and that's just the previous way things were done. Does this make sense to everybody as to why we're trying to take it central?
So, using Corby as an example, each of those entrances would then have an NAP10 code associated with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it means that if you're then trying to use pathways, and I know this is a long-term thing because pathways is quite complicated, but if you're trying to use pathways to map your ways of getting in, and these 2 are closed, it's saying, if you come off here, just go round to the right, around by the car park, and you'll find a side entrance. So it's kind of giving people those extra bits of information that they might not be able to see when they are at the station, and it's giving that extra accessibility information of if you come in the car park, there's a side entrance, so you don't have to go loop around the building, for example.
Fab.
So and that's kind of one of the goals of taking them from the local authority control. Now, it is going to be a nightmare. I have not figured out how to do it. This is at the bottom of my heart of my what I want to do. Oh, wow. This one's going blindingly fast. So what I am wanting to do, here is my vision of the world. The train infrastructure is all on 910, which is that 910 is the ATCO code for trains. So we have a rail station, we have a rail platform, we have rail replacement bus stops. This is a new entity. So this is, I've forgotten what rail station, R is something for rail station. Rail platform is RPL. Rail replacement buses will be RRB. And rail station entrances, RSEs, will move from being under local authorities to being held centrally. Now, that will be a long, slow move. There'll be duplicates for ages. We're just going to take the longest time just to slowly migrate across, because it is and migration of data within the system. One of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to create this from the rail data marketplace information, or essentially a rail feed of some sort with minimal human intervention. So this means that, for example, if Elise got a sexy new train station, because you might get one.
I've got one.
You've got one?
Well, no, I've recently had one, as in Corby, and we're just doing Wellingborough at the moment.
So you will get a new rail station, for example, that gets created on the network. You won't have to tell me to put it in. I will already know about it. I will know the date that it's going to go live, and that will all be within NAP10. I'm going to call it automagically. We're going to do it with limited human intervention. So we're going to use a bit of data work to take in a feed and ensure that everything in that feed is created as a rail station, with some human intervention just to make sure that dates, go live dates, etc. are very clear. The names will match across all of NAP10 and the Rail Delivery Marketplace, which they currently don't. I did some work here. So I did a rail audit. And one of the reasons for doing this, and one of the reasons for struggling to do a rail, is I got this lovely thing which was all of the station attributes, and you're like, yes, this is exactly what I need. It's got NAP10 codes, it's got rail stations and everything. And the last one that I can get was updated in March 2023. So that's the most recent one of these that I can get my hands on. I had to do a manual audit, and you'll say, Jay, why did you have to do a manual audit? And I can point out, for example, Edlington doesn't match the station names that are provided by Rail Data Marketplace, and the station names within the common name should match, and they don't. And a lot of them are things like the word and got turned into an ampersand. We need to switch them round. And when I came up with all of this, there were 5 stations to add, and I thought, oh, that's not too bad. 5 stations across that time. I will show you why that's wrong. Of the 2,700, 2,200 match. So I'm like, yes, the bulk of them is kind of there. There's 213 where I need to do a name change. That's relatively easy. We'll just go through and we'll make some tweaks and ensure that names match, especially when it's all of these secondary pieces around the Surrey and all of those kind of little bit. I can do this fast. Clear name go. So Caledonia Road, there's a lot of Burton-on-Trent, it's capitalisation of the on. These are all things that fail data matches and cause issues when people are trying to do good data on the systems. So we're just sorting all of these out. A lot of the ones that I need to remove. These are ones that there is no record of them anymore. They've either moved across, they're closed, they've moved across, so I just need to take them out of the system. This is stuff that we can now do because we've got the ability to remove stops from the system. So I can remove all of these stops. And you'll notice that some of these are not in England, are not in Scotland, and are not in Wales. For example, Marne-la-Vale rail station is in France, as is where's one of the really wonky ones? Oh, and this St Pancras. There's multiple St Pancrases. This is getting rid of one of them. A lot of the Heathrow ones don't exist. The ones that are Rail Air, I'm going to work with the Rail Air, with the buses that go there, and ensure that they have a station that they can use for doing their Rail Air links. Avignon, that's right. I knew there was another one. Avignon is not in England, Scotland, or Wales, so I need to get rid of it because it shouldn't be in our data set. And then the last ones that we're doing. We have 5 Clapham junctions. Why do we have 5 Clapham junctions? Because we don't have platforms. If we have platforms, there'll only be 1 Clapham junction, which has 17, 18 platforms. But at the moment, we've got 5 Clapham junctions because each of the Clapham junctions matches to a rail station entrance or exit or something. I don't understand how they got to 5, but there's 5. So these are all the ones that we're pulling apart, so that there's only the one of them. So these are all this is going to reduce the number of stations down to the right number of stations. And there are always complications. There are always complications that we will need to sort out. For example, where the Elizabeth line runs, there's an Elizabeth line version of the station and a non-Elizabeth line version of the station, and I need to figure out how I'm going to do that. I need to figure out how I'm going to do ones like Chalfonts and Latimer, which is a national rail station that also has a metro station calling, and Leon's gone, so he doesn't. And there's a number of others in Newcastle. A number of the Newcastle metros call it national rail stops and use the same platforms. So I literally don't know how I'm going to represent those within the data, but what I'm intending on doing is fixing the 2,500, the easy set first. Those 2,500, there's probably about 2,000 of them that are going to be easy to solve. They're just going to be a rail station with some platforms. Put them in, give them some rail station entrances, give them some rail replacement bus stops, and job's done, jobs are good in. For the rest, there'll be exceptions and rules and discussions around how we should handle these, and I will be bringing those to the group very much as I am now. Does that make sense to everybody? Is there any absolute red flags that anybody sees here with this?
My biggest concern is that you're doing all this without actually talking to Network Rail.
I am talking to Network Rail, don't worry. I'm working with the Rail Delivery Group. I'm working with the GBR TT team, whatever that was what they were called when I started on this. I don't know what they'll be called afterwards.
GBR.
I'm working with the Rail Delivery Group a lot.
That's not Network Rail.
Then I need to go and find the right person in Network Rail. I have made overtures. We are hunting for them. We've also asked for the right policy person, because a lot of this is driven by policy. And because a lot of this is also driven by making their accessibility information more consumable for journey planners, that is the next thing that I'm also doing. Pete, you've got your hand up, and you're if you've got a Network Rail connection that you want me to talk to, bang in. Your thoughts?
I apologise. I don't have someone at Network Rail for you to contact. I've got a lot of concerns over the quality of the data that's going to end up coming out of this. And I say that because I've worked in so many stations. I've worked in Scotland, Wales and England, and the data quality in even like National Rail is significantly different depending on the train operating company. And there are a lot of instances where the stops move quite often. For example, Stoke-on-Trent will use the front of the station if it's a little bit of rail replacement, but they'll close the back car park if it's a big set of rail replacement.
Mm-hmm.
There's very different stops there. There's issues at some places like Chester where they say you use the local bus stop, but you don't. And there's been full risk assessments done on using this bus stop, but nobody yet realised that it's actually a taxi rank, and taxis will double park there to block buses serving it. So you can't serve the right places there. There was one in South Wales where the stop moved 4 times in a week, depending on how traffic conditions were. Because someone parked badly one day, there was an issue with a staff member and local residents another day. And I feel like we're going to end up with 3,000 different rail replacement stops for some places because it moves so much.
So one of the great things is we can set the diameter of the stop. So if it's something that's going to move a little bit around a road, I think we can set it up to like 50 to 70 meters is what most of the real-time information is set to. As long as the stop would remain within that 50 to 70 meters, we can be a little bit adaptive. But I totally hear you, Pete. I'm having to do this and having to provide the data. I'm aware that this is the quality of the data is quite variable, but also one of the other things is it can't be any worse than what's in there now, because what's in there now was provided to people like myself who made decisions that I cannot fathom. For example, Gatwick interchange is listed in the 910s when it shouldn't be. The train between the shuttle between the two Gatwick terminals, that's actually a metro, but for some reason it was listed as a 910 stop. So that's one of my things is identifying, saying that everything on 910 is GBR rail and nothing else. So it's the first time that clarity has been provided, because up till now it's been up to somebody like me to decide what a station is coded up as, which is frankly bonkers because I know nout.
I'm wondering if this is something that maybe the train operators could be providing via rail data marketplace rather than going through an intermediary in the nicest way, rather than going through yourself and causing one, you more work, and two, it's another barrier to getting the issues sorted. I don't mean that in a horrible way, but
absolutely.
It's another person in the chain that we've then got to contact you to get a stop moved. And if it's straight from the rail company, it could be moved possibly a lot quicker with less emails being sent.
That's why we want to automate this coming in from Rail Data Marketplace. So we are now currently looking at a number of different feeds from the RDM and outside the RDM as well, of how we can grabbing a canonical list of rail stations. I thought that would be relatively easy. I was dissuaded of that about 4 months ago. I am still trying to figure out, and more than that ago, I have spent many months trying to get and work out how to get a canonical list of rail stations. We've got some help from Andy Hole actually provided me some work that his team had done, taking SIF and NAPTAN to help me, because a lot of these stations he was asking me to put in, and I was like, where are you getting this information from, because it's not on my list, and he's provided me this lovely which is helping, and how we do this translation, which my team are going to look at as to how we build this automatically inside of our system, so we can take this feed and go, does the station exist? Yes, no. If not yes, then off we go and we start trying to make it in the system, using somebody other than a human. Currently, to edit any train stations, I've got to go in and manually edit the XML to make it work. which is not pleasant and not easy, and it takes me many times to have a go. Ian, you're going to save me from whining about my life.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up on the last point, really. I mean, we've had similar issues with the rail replacement bus stops being moved at a number of stations, and we don't generally get informed of it. It's only sort of kind of picked up by chance, really, because we don't have that liaison with the train operating company. So that's probably they're probably the people to lead on it, and to keep they really need to keep us up to date. So because the information comes, it's their decision as to where they have their rail replacement buses stop. And the other thing I was going to say is some of the rail replacement bus stops in our area, there's absolutely, I mean, we could add them to NAPTAN, no problem, but there's absolutely nothing on the ground to state that this is a bus stop or anything. It's just a piece of pavement. And in one case, I mean, there is a bus stop for one of our stations, but it's 700 meters from the platform, so it's
quite a walk.
Less than ideal for anybody waiting at the railway station who suddenly finds they have to go and catch the bus.
Absolutely. So one of the things from the previous meeting is somebody, I believe these are called a dolly, and somebody sent me a nice picture of a dolly just so that I could be very aware of what temporary bus stops should or could look like. One of the other things of pulling this in centrally, if we've got, I don't know how many bus operators there are, but the bus operators times 145 or so local authorities to organise their rail replacement stops versus 5 or 6 rail operators coming into a central point to organise their rail replacement stops. That's several orders of magnitude less complexity if we have the rail replacement bus stops sitting within the 910 and you don't need to manage them. I know that when they use local stops, that's going to be a little thing that I will need to manage. But for the most part, I'm thinking this might be the easiest way to handle it, because I also don't have 148 people on these calls and engaging with me. I have about half to two-thirds of NAPTAN engaging and updating on a regular basis, and I have a long tail of people who don't engage and who don't update on a regular basis and who will struggle with some of these notions. Does that make sense, Ian, as to some of the decisions that I'm trying to make and some of the approaches that I'm taking?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It's led by the railways, so yeah, it needs to.
Yeah, and I am going to have to go and talk to all of the train operators and try to make those connections. I'm working, the rail delivery group are the entrance into that world. I'm trying to get them to give me or to get contacts with all of the train operators and their rail replacement people, but that is a tricky thing because this is a legislation problem that I'm trying to solve. I'm trying to get as much in there, even if it's not the best. I'm trying to get as much in there as possible so that we can then start to fix it and iterate it by having the structures there to fix and iterate, rather than which one of the other suggestions was just tell all of your local authorities to put in rail replacement bus stops. And I'm like, that's going to lead to a lot of mess. The other thing is if they're bus stops that are listed as your style bus stops, your bus operators may think that those are places where they can schedule services to and from, and they may not be, because they're temporary, because they move, because they're there only for rail replacement. They close the car park so they can turn a bus around. So the rest of the time you won't be able to get a bus in there to turn around to pick people up from that stop. So all of those complications I'm trying to avoid by having it held centrally. And one of the things is I'm trying to get used to test and challenge and understand that decision and force me to really think through any of the edges on this. because it's tricky. Pete, help me.
Unfortunately, what I'm going to say is going to probably not help. But how do you think this might work with buses that are in the train database, such as Carmarthen to Aberystwyth, which Transport for Wales have put in to enable through ticketing? You can plan full train journeys to and from these places, but it is only a bus that's there, and it's a scheduled bus route that's fully in bus open data.
Yep.
I feel like I've just made your life worse, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry for that.
It's not worse. And this is the rail air ones as well are the same. They are they are train stations and bus stops, and I need to go and engage with the train operators and the bus operators who use those stations and look at it's a problem. So with the rail air, it's a problem that was created in 1967, 2 years before I was born, that I'm having to sit down and figure out how we should solve it. Should we have things in 910 that are not physical rail stations? If there is a physical rail station nearby, should they use that physical rail station now? Because at the time when the rail air ones were put in at Heathrow, for example, the Heathrow rail station wasn't yet open, and that's why they were done to that particular point. How do we do all of these things? I need to sit down and figure it out. They are the edge cases that are sent to try me. And that's why I'm kind of going, and I'm doing very much like what I'm doing for the A+ NAPTAN of let's look at getting the bulk easy group in, and then work my way through all of the edge cases one by one, because each one will have nuances and decisions that will need to be considered, need to be thought out. And in doing all of those edge cases, we could delay putting the stuff in for years, or I get the core stuff in and then work my way through all of the edge cases, because them edge cases, they're about a third. I'm at a wild guess. If we say we've got about 3,000, I think I can get about 3,000 rail stations, because it's 2,800 and change. I think I can get about 2,000 in easily, and then it's working out all of the rest over the next God only knows how long in those discussions and figuring out how we handle the bus ones. Do I then take out a rail station and just put in buses? Do they stay within the system? How do we keep them in the system and indicate that they're not a rail station? How do I deal with the rail stations that have permanent rail replacement buses simply because we can't close the station? Because that's a whole other thing. Can I remove stations that are closed but not closed? Can I? And I'm trying to find a rail policy person to give me the okay to remove some of the stations from NAPTAN. I mean, I know that I can remove the ones in France. That's easy. I've got authority to do that. But for the ones that are in my data set, who do I go and seek approval from to remove them? Should I just remove them and put them back if I need to? How will be done with it? Or what exactly has to happen to remove these? And if I remove some of them that are being used by rail air, how much stuff will I break? A lot. So I need to, there is so much in that tail. And I'm like, the tail is going to be, every single stop's going to be an exception and will fall into particular types. But if I can get the 2,000 or so sorted, we've at least got better data for those 2,000 stops. We know that we'll be able to pick up the new ones as they come in, because what did they give us a list of? There's 63 stops that either need to be put in or taken out of NAPTAN that don't match the SIF. And there's a lot that are please add it. It's got to be added. It's got to be added. I don't even have those on my audit. You saw my audit only had 5. So it's like, how do I get these? How do I know when the start dates are? Who do I get the start dates from? These are huge data questions that I need to solve, because otherwise rail in NAPTAN is going to be a mess, is going to stay a mess, and is not going to be as usable as it should be. Does that make sense as to why I'm tackling this monster? And also because rail replacement buses and legislation for PSVAIR meant I have to do something. At a minimum, I can do rail stations with a 100 meter zone around them, which won't catch some of them, but will be able to catch a bus. There's a simple way of doing it where I don't have to put every stop in, but that would be a nice interim if I can't get enough rail replacement bus stops in. So yeah, I am thinking of solutions constantly to all of the problems to ensure that there is the data, so that if you're running a rail replacement bus stop, you have the data to do your audiovisual announcements. Because without that, you can't run the audiovisual announcements. I don't know. So yeah, if anyone's got a magic bullet, I will happily take that magic bullet. I will happily take any idea of how else to do this. You're all running terrified from the shared notion of what this is. Elise, I know that you come from a rail background. Do you have any good contacts for me at some of the TOCs?
No, because the talks are all changed. They're changing. I really wouldn't touch them with a barge pole at the moment. They're all in meltdown.
I'm aware. I think you can feel my pain. You can feel where I'm sitting with this.
So for me, everything sits with Network Rail. It doesn't sit with the TOCs, because the Network Rail is the infrastructure manager for all of the rail network. So if you're wanting to do anything such as putting in NAPTAN codes for the entrances to stations, to me that is a Network Rail area. It's nothing to do with the TOCs. The TOCs lease the railway stations from Network Rail as part of their franchise commitment, but the buck stops with Network Rail as far as the infrastructure is concerned. So it's Network Rail you need to be with.
Do you have a contact Network Rail?
I have sent you details.
Oh, brilliant.
I sent them several months ago.
Oh God, please resend them again. Just assume. Sorry, if you've met me, well, Elise has kind of met me. Everyone's kind of met me. I can be a little bit of chaos at times, and my mailbox, after 2 weeks away, just got turned into complete chaos, and I've just gone. I will do some stuff.
Okay, I will resend the contacts that I sent over to you.
Yeah, my apologies.
I think that they would be the first point of call, and they can then advise you going forward.
And I will take them through this and what we're planning on doing, and probably have them melt down as much as I am.
No, they won't melt down.
Oh, good. Hopefully they will turn around and say, actually having names match would be a really good starter for 10. There's 213 of those.
They're too high level for that level of detail.
That's great.
They need the concept ideas first, and then they can take it forward within Network Rail as to how to do it.
Brilliant. I will give them the high level ideas and then talk to them about, because I'm also good at the concepts, and my team are really good at taking the high level concepts that I've got and actually making it happen, which is what's happened with A+ NAPTAN. That was very much conceptual, and we've just been able to make it happen. Is there we've got about 20 minutes left, and I feel like we've done rail stations to death. Is there anything that we want to talk about before we go away? Is there any burning issues? Pete?
On the NAPTAN API in the XML, it seems to be showing that a lot of authorities are creating thousands of new stops every day. Are you aware?
Are these saying that, are these where the revision, I think it is new?
Possibly.
Yeah, so there's
Highland
status,
and
so there's
Wokingham seem to be the worst ones for it at the minute. They're just shown as created, and then every couple of days their created date goes to like
yeah,
the day of upload.
yeah. It's a software problem for so there's some softwares out there that are doing that. The last session, the session before this one, which I'm about to now they've fixed the problem that was stopping me from publishing, creating the videos and publishing them when we upgraded software on my laptop. I'm about to put it up. So just to give you a heads up, there is, oh, good Lord, I should be able to remember this. Just give me 2 seconds. I'll go to Norfolk. There's modification and status. So status is active or inactive, and modification is new, revised, or deleted. Now, what we have uncovered is modification is balked beyond balked beyond balked. Even people with relatively good systems, it is broken. And it is broken because some systems were not updating. London, for example, everything was listed as new, no matter how many revision numbers that they had. Some systems were not incrementing revision numbers when they should. And as far as I understand, some systems are playing with creation date and modification date. If you let me know which ones are causing the most issues, I can go and look at who's managing them and ask them to double check their software. But and this is not to damn any software. Any and all software is doing this. Some of them are playing with the creation dates. Some of them are playing with modification dates. I have some modification dates that are after creation dates. No, before creation dates. I've some creation modification dates which are the wrong way around for insert software reasons here. We in January, I've got about 6 weeks to prepare a comms piece. The comms piece will be creation date, modification date, revision number, and modification. Don't use them. Don't rely on them in your software, because we are not able to canonically say that a modification date or your modification dates actually should be fine. Your creation dates may not be, because systems are doing some things with them. Your revision numbers, don't rely on those. And your modification, don't rely on that. The only ones that you should rely on is status. It'll either be active, you can call it the stop, inactive, don't use the stop, or when they're removed, and something from inactive will either go back to active or go to or be managed removal and be removed from the system. That's the only thing that you can rely on, because when I was trying to understand from 148 from everybody how you used modification and status, it was a mess, and people who thought their systems were doing one thing went on and checked during the call and found out their systems are in fact not doing what they expected. So that's a bit that I'm going to try to find the right messaging out to explain why these columns that look like they might be really useful should not be relied on. And in fact, it's only status and modification date are the two that you can rely on from this data. And there is nothing I can do to fix it. Literally nothing I can do. I was going to call it data bankruptcy. I don't know what I'm going to call it. Data bankruptcy is not the right name for it, but we're going to advise that this data, while it's collected and while everyone is doing their best, there has been so much. I'm trying to think of the right word that's not a sweary word, because I'm not allowed to use sweary words. situation. Everyone's done the best that every system has done their best, but the situation is that creation date, revision number, and modification can generally not be relied on. Does this help you, Pete, or does this make you are hanging your head because you've been doing things that rely on these fields?
No, that it's helpful to know. It's most funny because the CSV file doesn't pick it up. The CSV file works fine, but it's only the XML that shows it really strange.
Oh, that's interesting. Please send me those examples and I'll get the team to look at, because the CSV is created from the XML, so it shouldn't be doing anything different whatsoever. The other thing is I wish to at some point change the CSV file so it's not just a CSV. You don't just have this one CSV file. You can get the data that you want in the format that you want much easier. And one of the reasons for doing that is it is only the CSV file where there's a limit on the length of common name. I cannot find it anywhere else in the schemas and in the XSD files, etc. It is only because the CSV file has a limiter that limiter is folded all the way around the system. So because having only 48 characters creates a little bit of a problem. And I'm going to sort this out. And one of the other things is clear down code may also go, because clear down code, I mean, you can essentially ignore it, because clear down, and this is some of the information that I want to put out, is clear down code is from a very old system that was deprecated in the early 2010s, and no, which is why it's generally not filled out, and we don't use it because it was an old way of showing that you'd left a stop. You had this clear down code apparently that did something. It's not, nobody's produced it for ages, but we want to be clear that you just don't need it. You don't need to provide it. If you've got it in there, you can take it out at your leisure. And any data consumers should not be picking it up and using it for anything. Because I think it's trying to provide people that clarity of what fields are what and how they should be used, because I don't think that that's been around for a while either. Does that help you at all, Pete? There's probably a couple of others, but those are the big ones that I'm doing right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
No worries. You've all got a preview of next year. Elise, any thoughts?
No, just to say that I've sent the email over to you, so it should have the information
Brilliant.
that you need.
I will chase them up and go and make friends today. In between, I've got another 2-hour meeting this afternoon, so I've got a little bit of time to run between them. Is there anything else that we need to discuss? Otherwise, I'm going to call it short. Just say if you've got thoughts that you want to put in the feedback corner, please do. It really helps me know that I'm giving you what you need on these calls, and we're focusing on the right things. If there are things that you'd like us to talk about, we've got we'll be talking about A+ NAPTAN, and we'll be talking about rail replacement buses a lot. If there are other things, other topics you'd like us to dive into, I'm more than happy to, as long as I get a couple of months' notice, because it gives me time to do a bit of research and a bit of trawling through the data and chatting to people about it. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I'm gonna... Iona.
Yeah, sorry, it's just this isn't really one for the group, but we have finally, we think, got our NAPTAN files ready to test. So I was just going to send you one. I just wanted to let you know I'm going to send you it kind of for you to look out for.
Sweet.
I'll send it over once I'm logged off here.
Yeah, my team...
and let us know. We'd probably rather, we'll send you just one to start with, and you can give us feedback, and then we'd probably need them all tested before we want to upload any of them. But yeah, I'll send that over just shortly.
Yeah, that's totally fine. My team set me up on our test site so that I can
You can
I
run the
can-
test.
I can run those through. It's a mirror of production, and it's even got a couple of newer pieces in it because it gets upgraded a couple of minutes before the live site gets upgraded, and it just it runs the same. It'll bring back the errors. I think the last ones you sent me, you actually got really. I don't think you had any errors. So hopefully what you send me will run sweet. And
Well,
I
yeah, I
won't
think
have
the
any
the
problem.
ones that we sent you before were kind of probably set up correctly, but then they were missing all the new data that we'd entered in the new system. So, and then once we got the new stuff in, we noticed other stuff was then missing. So we've been back and forth a lot with the developers. So hopefully, I've lost count of how many versions we've had now, but we've had a quick look over it, and
that sounds a
hopefully it's good now.
nightmare.
Yeah, it's been a bit frustrating. Weeks and weeks. So we keep thinking we're going to get it, and then there's, they've put one thing in and then another thing drops out. So
Yeah, I know that feeling. Well, I do know that feeling. One of the things that I will say with the current team that we're working with, we're spending a lot of time on what are they called? No, my brain's gone dead. A whole pile of testing to ensure that if you've made a change, everything stays the same, everything else stays the same. So we do a lot of testing across. I need to go because I'm about to get a delivery from a grocery company that is bringing my groceries to my front door. So I'm going to leave you all. I'm going to say thank you very much for your time and your patience and your energy and your thoughts and your connections and your feedback. It just really helps us trying to make this data set the bestest little data set it can be, because it's so important and it got so little love for so many years.
and thanks for your time as well.
Yeah, have a great Christmas and all of that. I know it seems ridiculously early, but I am wearing my Have a Very Dolly Christmas t-shirt, so I am
Thanks,
that
Andrew.
person.
Yeah, Andrew, thanks very
Thank
much.
you, Dr. J. Good Christmas.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.